Hello, Melissa, and welcome back to everybody to the Brave Writer podcast,
where we provide professional development for parent educators.
I'm so glad to see you, Melissa, and to think about education today. I was reading a Substack this week that was really taking homeschooling to task, and it focused a lot on the failure of parents to give practical skills combined with academic skills. And then today you brought up this need to talk about life skills. So I'm very excited for us to address what some people think is either an overemphasis or a lack of emphasis, depending on what kind of parents you have.
I think that's so funny that you just encountered it. I keep seeing videos by teachers who are expressing some frustration, like classroom teachers, where kids are showing up without some of the basic school readiness skills that used to be standard. And I think it's just an expression of how overtaxed a lot of people are right now, right?
That's true. And we've had kind of a conversion, an overhaul from the tactile, paper-centered living to everything being digital. For instance, my grandchildren don't know what coins are. Like, they never see them. They don't know what a quarter is. They don't know what a dime is. And I was cracking up about that because I remember when my weekly allowance went from a dime to a quarter, which was more than double, right? And I thought, oh, it'll only take me 4 weeks to get $1. You know? Right. But we were very much facile with these tactile objects, cutting with scissors, using a Scotch tape roll, being able to sharpen a pencil. I saw on Threads the other day, what are some basic pieces of hardware your house had that no house has today? And one of the most common ones was an installed pencil sharpener, either in the basement, the garage, or the den.
I saw that too. There were so many garage pencil sharpeners, and it cracked me up because you and I, just a few weeks ago, one of our little practical tips was have pencil sharpeners all over the house.
Yes, exactly. And so today we want to look at some of the skills that kids would benefit knowing over the course of their childhood. In other words, do not listen to this list and try and schedule it for next week.
I think there's some things on this list that I still haven't learned how to do.
And we want to also preface it with this. The times, they are always a-changin'. And skills that I didn't get as a young person are literally the skills that built my business from scratch. So part of what we're trying to teach our kids isn't the discrete skills. It is the capacity to have faith in yourself to learn new skills as they emerge and become valuable in the current marketplace. So part of the goal of life skills is a meta goal. It's not just learn how to sharpen a pencil. It's how do I teach myself what I need to know to be successful in the current time and place that I'm living my life?
Yes. And I think it's also rooted in this idea that there isn't this valuable subset of knowledge that's academic knowledge that we learn in school, and that's what education is. There's all this other type of life education that is so vital, and often we find ourselves saying, why didn't anybody teach me how to do this in school? How many times have you heard somebody say, why didn't they teach us how to do our taxes in school?
Correct. In fact, I think there are a couple of states that have just added that as a requirement for graduation. I don't know what they are. I was reading it in an article in passing, but that they are doing a life skills finance class as a part of high school. I think that would be super valuable. I don't know about you, Melissa, you're a little younger than me, but we all had to take home ec when I was in school. That included sewing and cooking. I still remember how to make like a fluffy omelet where you separate the yolk from the whites and you beat the whites until they're puffy, and then you fold in the yolks and you put them in this two-sided omelet pan. Like, that was a really big deal back in the day, but it had so many skills, right? You had to separate the eggs and the yolks. You had to beat the whites to the right stiffness. You had to fold back in these yolks. And then even the omelet pan was very 70s era, but it was meant to teach you how to create something that was following steps in a recipe, not just combining like a mix that you would buy in the store. And so I think part of what we're talking about here is the recognition of competencies that you are helping your child acquire while they're still at home with you.
It's interesting. I was in high school in the 80s, and those classes were very gendered. The boys took woodshop, industrial arts, it was called, and the girls we had sewing and cooking in home ec. And I learned things like how to braise a piece of meat, which I don't believe I've done since I graduated.
And yet I will say learning how to sew was super valuable. And it was really fun for me as an adult to go back and learn how to quilt and teach sewing to my kids. And just to be, pat myself on the back a little bit, I taught all my kids to sew, not just the girls. Noah was my first sewing and knitting student, and he learned both. So, I moved out of the gendered kind of attitude about it, but those were valuable skills to learn. I feel like everyone should know how to put on a button. Everyone should know how to hem a pair of pants. Everyone should know how to thread a needle, right? And tie off a knot. Those are very basic skills. So that's what we want to talk about today. So Melissa, kick us off with some skills that you think are vital that can complement the academic life of a homeschool family.
We had a lot of fun putting this list together. I'll share with our listeners that I started shooting Julie ideas for the list, and then Julie started firing things back. And then it was time for me to go downstairs and have my homeschooling time with my youngest, who is 17. And what did we do for homeschooling today? I said, guys, I need help making a list. What are life skills that you need to know? I asked my oldest, what did you, when you got to college, what did you wish you had learned how to do? So some of this list is from my kids, including there's a few gaps, things that I now know we need to learn.
Well, Melissa, let's try and do it a little bit by age range if we can, right? Because immediately when you said that, I suddenly had 3 more things that came to my mind for, young adulthood. But let's start with little kids. What are some basic life skills that kids under age 7 could start playing with, practicing with, learning how to do?
Okay, so I think most young children today wear Velcro shoes. But learning how to tie a bow is really useful, and learning how to braid. Those 2 finger manipulative skills come in so handy for the rest of your life.
We've been told by researchers that dexterity and hand muscle skills are declining because of the ease of iPads, iPhones, controllers. And so kids actually need practice building up their finger strength and their dexterity. So yes, tying shoes is great. Although I will say some kids don't do it for a long time, but it's good to practice if you can. Buttoning and unbuttoning, zipping and unzipping, those are all potential ways to grow your children's dexterity. And please, please, please don't forget to teach your kids to use scissors. Those are really essential. And it's so easy to, as an adult, step in and do the cutting for your child. Especially lefties, get left-handed scissors. And you can start not by cutting accurately, just cutting paper into confetti, cutting straight lines, cutting zigzags, cutting things tiny, following a trace of a circle if you want to try it, but turn cutting into play, not just for an ultimate project end.
Yes, all kinds of fasteners, learning how to use a stapler. I think that some of these things may seem so obvious. Why do I need to be told to teach my kid how to use a stapler? They just use it. But I know that as I had more kids and my days were I was managing many different things at any one time, it became easier for me to just do it.
Yes, right. That's it. And I even am in that mode with my grandkids. And I had to be reminded by the mothers of my grandchildren, let him try first. Let her do it first. Because I just want to swoop in and get to the meat. But getting to the meat might remove the opportunity for that child to hold the pen, to try making the first cut, to snapping the snaps, right? Like letting them struggle to snap the snaps on a Barbie outfit. That's not an easy skill. It requires dexterity. Another thing that I think is important to remember with young kids, we talk a lot about sorting toys or clothing when we're talking about learning groupings. And that's pretty standard in most curriculum, but it's also a life skill. So being able to know the difference between shorts and pants and a skirt and a dress and short sleeve and long sleeve tops and what goes on a hanger and what doesn't, you might overlook that you're actually teaching when you're doing that, but you get to count that. That's all part of giving your children a sense of ownership and competence in their own lives.
That's right. Sorting the socks in the laundry.
Yeah.
I remember a friend of mine who was planning to homeschool and had a child who had just reached preschool age and was getting some flack for it and became kind of nervous. So she asked her friend whose child was a year older, like, what did your kid learn in preschool last year? And her friend said, well, sorting was a big one. So Alice got a laundry basket full of socks. And 10 minutes later, she was like, oh, great. Sorting is accomplished. Like, we do tend to worry sometimes that things need to be curriculumized.
Exactly.
And we devalue the stuff that happens, in the ordinary course of life.
Yes. And even one of the items that you have on our list is folding clothes. And that is a skill, learning how to lay them down and put the t-shirt arms in and fold it in thirds. Marie Kondo, if you're not good at folding, she is the queen, right? The Japanese are the origami culture. That folding is their top priority and art form. So if you want to be inspired instead of just the drudgery, you could even turn to the life-changing magic of tidying up for some folding instruction. And I'm sure that's online as well.
Oh, I think you can find a lot of videos for ways to fold. And you can get you can make a cardboard like t-shirt folder that you flip here, flip there, and it folds it neatly.
Yes, like Sheldon from The Big Bang Theory. That's how he
I was
folds.
thinking that exact scene.
Oh my gosh, so funny.
I was going to say, for young children, a great resource for thinking about what kinds of life skills can I incorporate into our days is to look at Montessori websites. Because that was one of Maria Montessori's big innovations, was getting kids doing the business of everyday life. And often they used child-sized tools to do it. I could not go out and get, mini brooms and special knives and things. So we worked with what we had, but setting the table, a 3-year-old can help with that.
1,000%. And teaching your kids how to fold napkins when they're young, they think that's wonderful. Teaching them how to clean the sliding glass door at the level of their height with a squirt bottle and paper towels. These are all ways to give your children power rather than chores, right? So we always want to think. I remember there was a speaker years ago who said, pass the skills of chores down. Because there is a moment in each child's life where it feels exciting to use the lawnmower. And then there's a moment where it stops being exciting. They need the next level of skill. So those early years, sorting, setting the table, clearing the table, deciding what goes in the trash, what goes into a storage container, these are all skills that feel empowering. I remember when I first learned how to make my bed, I was 5 years old. My mom taught me how. I felt so proud of the ability to make the bed look the way she made it look. These are options for you as a way to think about it, rather than thinking, okay, I'm telling my kid they have to contribute to the household. No, you're giving them life skills, and you're giving it to them at an age where it feels empowering and exciting to participate.
Right, where one of the things they want most in life is to do what big people do.
That's right.
And we can tell ourselves, this isn't stuff that we need to get through to get to the homeschooling part of our day. This is the homeschooling part of our day.
This is the homeschooling part. That's right. These things contribute to each other. So as we move up into the next age range, one of the skills that I think is really valuable, and I think we naturally do this often during read aloud time, is things like being able to assemble a puzzle or learning how to knit or use one of those knitting spools.
Right.
Again, with the dexterity, again, with troubleshooting, problem solving, but you're doing it with something tactile.
Right, right. And as handwriting is starting to happen, especially when kids are getting to around, age 8 or 9.
Yes.
A lot of people don't teach cursive writing anymore. in schools, like school programs have had to slide that back in order to introduce keyboarding time, right?
Yes, right.
But we can still, if we want, teach our kids to write in cursive. And even if you don't, I think it's really important to teach them to read cursive.
Yes. I will just admit right here that was my failing. I tried to combine cursive and manuscript by using Getty Dubai as the font that my kids learned. It's an italic font and it's very pretty. Like the way our kids wrote using Getty Dubai turned out beautifully, but the letter formation does not match cursive. It matches manuscript. So even my adult kids have had to teach themselves to read cursive and they're not great at it. So just take that as Julie would do that over if she could.
Oh, would Melissa? Because I used Getty Dubai too. It's beautiful. But you cannot recognize like a Palmer style cursive J.
No, or the letter B or the way the R is shaped. Those are very or the Q, very distinct.
I just saw somebody had written out in cursive in the style that I learned it in school, the word minimum. And they didn't dot the I's. And when you look at that, like I instantly was able to read it as minimum. And I guarantee you that my kids would be like, what?
What is this? What are all these curves and swings? I know.
It all looks the same.
No, that's absolutely true. And if you are wondering, well, no one uses cursive anymore. They don't need to read it. Here is one of the arguments for being able to. Historical documents are in cursive. So it's not just the letters from grandma, which is also a reason. But if your child is going to go into any of the liberal arts, there will be moments where they are called upon to read original writing that is in cursive because it predates typesetting. Which does bring us to typing. We should talk about typing. Like, Melissa, how early do you think kids should be taught to type?
I think with most of my kids, I started introducing some kind of kids typing software when they were around like 9.
Yeah.
And then a lot of them did Mavis Beacon. Do people still use Mavis Beacon teaches typing?
I honestly don't know, but all of my kids did, and they do type correctly, like their fingers are well placed on the keyboard. A lot of children today grow up with access to devices. And so their familiarity with the keyboard is different and it's more finger, like 2 or 3 finger based instead of the full 5 fingers. So I leave that to our audience to determine, but I will tell you a funny story. Today I was at Lowe's purchasing a refrigerator and the guy who was my, service agent, turns out he's my exact age, graduated in 79, born in 61. And he asked me, did you take typing in high school? I said, yes. He said, it's crazy. I type every day and have for over 30 years. And yet when I was in high school, I turned it down because I thought it was just for girls. He said, I couldn't understand why a guy would ever need typing. And I said back to him, you mean you didn't want to type your papers? Like even just that, like typing your papers for school? He said, no, I did wood shop. I didn't want to be in a class where you had to type a paper. And of course, now he's using it. So one of the things to remember is none of these skills are gendered.
Right.
We want all of our kids to have access to all skills and not see them as falling into specific gender domains because who knows where their career journey will take them.
When some of my kids were, I want to say early teens, and we were trying to work on typing at that time, and I'm guessing they're still floating around out there somewhere, you could just Google and find there were like free typing resources. The BBC used to have one on their website and kids could practice. One, learning just like I did in high school, which by the way, Julie, I had a very Gen X high school experience where my mom really paid no attention to what classes I signed up for, except one. She insisted that I take typing.
Wow.
And I was furious because it conflicted with creative writing.
Oh, no.
And I was like, but I'm going to be a writer. What class do you think has served me better?
So funny, but so accurate, right? Like so completely accurate. And honestly, whether or not your kids type accurately, ultimately, just knowing that they can type is important. What are some of the other skills that I see a couple on here that I really love? Let's talk about some of these household chores like changing vacuuming bags, or maybe changing the Swiffer on the bottom of your, Swiffer that you use for
Right.
floors instead of vacuuming carpeting. Those seem really important.
I had to get a new vacuum recently, and it has taken about half of my family to help me figure out how to, because this one doesn't have a bag. It has, a canister that you empty.
Yes.
But it has a filter that falls out. And so that struck me as one of these it's going to make my life harder every time I try to vacuum if I don't take the time right now to figure out how to do it without a fuss.
It's true.
There's so many things in life that I can give to my kids to save them from having to figure it out with fuss or struggle over and over.
That's true. And it's also true that these skills like laundry can be learned by young kids while they're the most interested. We tend to do those tasks too long before we pass them off. So I taught all my kids to wash their own clothes starting in 4th grade. And I would do the laundry with them for a year and then turn them loose. By doing it in 4th grade, they still had to stand on a little step stool, to reach the top of the washer. But they were feeling the power of being in charge of a machine. And I think we underestimate that value. The same thing goes for baking. We want their hands on the hand mixer. We want their hands using the knife safely. We want them to use the measuring cups. Whenever we give them a tool that is a little bit sophisticated from their perspective, you've hit the sweet spot of when they're ready to learn that skill. It should not be after it's an obvious, easy thing to do. It should be right when it's still possible to make mistakes. That's the right sweet spot.
This is maybe a good place to slip in that it doesn't all have to fall on you to teach these things.
True.
Baking for me, okay, I don't love to bake except bread, number one. And I am the type of person who in the kitchen, all my focus has to go to the task at hand. I was not good at including my kids in the cooking. But my friend Lisa was, and I was good at other things that Lisa did not love so much, like teaching Shakespeare. So did I send my girls over to Lisa's house so that we lived near them when I just had the 3 oldest, right? And my little girls would go over, and she's the one who taught them how to make scones and cookies and things. And then I did like poetry and Shakespeare.
That's a great exchange. I love that. That's perfect. Melissa, what are some of the home repairs a kid can do that you think are important for them to learn?
I don't know, because I still need to learn them all. But okay, how about winterizing your spigots? My youngest and I just did this the other day. We took off the covers that we had to put on to keep the faucets from freezing over the winter. And getting the hose on and off is tricky. That's something that a young kid can learn how to do, and also can help you remember where you put the faucet covers when you took them off in April.
That's an amazing one. I did not even think of that. I think learning how to hang a painting or a picture on the wall, right? Like using a hammer and a nail and getting the right height. I've always been very intimidated to use a drill, but I hear people can learn how to do that. I have women friends who do it, which brings me to the amazing assembly of IKEA furniture. There is the possibility of including your kids in the process of making a shoe holder or a small bookcase. I mean, a lot of these are pretty straightforward. It's like a Lego build, but it's just bigger, right? It's visual instructions. They supply you with the tools and you can make them right on the spot.
I think some of the most fun my kids and I ever had was trying to figure out together, navigating our way through instructions that I found a little confusing because they were visual. They weren't words.
Yes, right. Exactly. And they're used to it from working on maps on video games and working with Lego instructions, which are all visual. So they have sometimes a really nice reference point for that. So that can be really satisfying. What else have you got on our list?
Checking tire pressure.
Oh my gosh.
With the gauge, and then going to the gas station and putting air in the tires.
Okay. This one, I'm just going to say, I hate it. My car is so darn sensitive that if we have any significant weather changes, it immediately tells me that the pressure is off in my car. And I hate doing the pressure measuring and the standing there and trying to get it in. So yes, very important skill to have once you become a driver, unfortunately, not one that I love. And you included in here jump starting a car. I would say all car maintenance. We've kind of skipped forward into the teen years, but all car maintenance, learning how to pump gas, learning how to put it away without spilling it everywhere. All of those skills are something that teens should learn while they're in the process of getting their license, obviously. Yeah.
Right, right. We used to have a day of the week where it was part of our little Fly Lady household routine. It was clean out the car day. And because the kids, when they were little, loved using a dustbuster, that was one of those it's like Tom Sawyer getting his friends to paint the fence.
Yes, perfect. That's exactly what I'm talking about. When you assign your child a chore that involves a machine, you get a much higher level of joyful participation. So whenever you can turn the machine over to a kid, you're in great shape. Which brings me to other things like making smoothies requires a blender. Kids love pushing the buttons on the blenders. So if you're going to teach your kids how to use machines in your house, think about the mixer, the blender, the toaster, anything that's machine driven, the dust buster, the vacuum. What ones am I missing, Melissa? All machine based skills.
Changing the battery in the electric toothbrushes.
Oh, yeah.
And the remote controls, right?
Yep.
And using a battery tester. I guess batteries are on my mind because one of my kids wears hearing aids, and he had a lot of fine motor delay, and I wrote it into his OT plan because he had occupational therapy, and I was like, let's work on changing the batteries in a hearing aid. They're tiny.
That's fabulous. Using a screwdriver.
Yes.
Using a hammer, knowing the difference between a Phillips head and a flathead screwdriver. Like, these are so easy to take for granted, but they're things that you can intentionally teach to your kids. And they get a lot of joy out of it. I don't know. Tools are just fun to hold in your hand. Saws, all of it. All of it.
Right, right. And any kind of yard work, it's easy to gradually hand over more and more responsibility. Pruning, with little pruners just to do little shoots of things. And then as they get older, they're helping you lop branches off.
Or deadheading the flowers, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Not just weeds, although we did at one point pay our children by the dandelion to weed our garden. And they've reminded me that they were poorly paid. I thought I was giving them really good, amount per dandelion. And they look back now and they're like, Mom, we were underpaid.
That's funny. We used to have a neighbor who had an apple tree, and she would hire my kids when they were little to pick up all the fallen apples that were rotting in her yard.
Yes.
And that turned out to be like a really important life skill because it was how to deal with something kind of yucky.
Yeah, right. That's true. That's a really good point. And similarly, potting and repotting plants, whether it's indoor or outdoor plants, is a skill. And my mother taught me, and I taught my kids. We got really into African violets. That's kind of my specialty. But it's fun to actually walk them through that step, give everybody their own pot, let them grow their one plant, let them tend it. Instead of assigning them to yours, give them one that they can supervise. Growing a plant is very satisfying, and helping them learn how to care is part of that job.
I noticed that you put build a backyard bonfire on the list.
Yes, we do one every year with our Christmas tree, and we also have done fires for roasting marshmallows or whatever, but kids love fire. So if you can teach them how to do it safely and allow them to really set up a good blaze, if you live in a part of the country that allows that. California, no. Ohio, yes.
Right. Maybe not this summer on the West Coast.
Ditch the desk and rediscover the joy of science. Is your spring homeschool routine feeling a little stale? When the sun starts shining and the warm weather is drawing you outdoors, it's the perfect time to pivot, to lean into unit studies, and to breathe new life into your homeschool day. Brave Writer has a free guide called a Build a Science Unit Study with Brave Writer. and it shows you how to turn your child's natural wonder into an engaging learning adventure that combines subjects for both ease and delight. Imagine checking off those end of the year boxes and knowing you've covered science in a meaningful way. Head over to the show notes where we've got a link for you so that you can download a free copy of our Brave Writer Build a Science Unit study that is just perfect for spring. And now, back to the show. So, Melissa, let's pivot for a moment and talk a little bit about money. We alluded to it at the beginning. There is a lot of financial literacy that kids need to have. And today, it's so different than it used to be. People are buying subscriptions. They are Venmoing or Zelling money from a bank account without it ever passing through their fingers. They are being tempted, teenagers, to gamble.
Right.
Like they can pretend to be 18 and start gambling on sports betting or actually the poly market, which is any category of betting. What do you think would look like a good instruction model for subscribing, unsubscribing, sending money? Like, what are things parents can do to ensure their kids have a healthy relationship with digital money?
Gosh, that is such a great topic. And there's so many layers to it, right? Like learning how to find where the subscribe and unsubscribe functions are. You know, if you have Apple, you have your iCloud account and where to check on your phone to see what you're subscribed to, when it expires, how to stop it. Also, just you know that when you subscribe to something like in Apple, there's different tier. Something just tried to get me to buy an annual subscription, and whatever it was like $94. No, thank you. And I said no. And then, but I went into like, there was a free trial. I went to cancel the free trial. There's an important life skill. How to remember to cancel your free trials, right?
Yes.
And it had all of these different subscription options that it didn't show me right away. And now there was like, you could get the annual for $64.
So true. I read an article somewhere that talked about turning down the first offer because you invariably get a better offer after. And there's also trickiness for kids who are gaming, right? I mean, you are a gamer. It is very easy to rack up a pretty high bill when you're buying weapons or identities or outfits, right? Isn't that true?
I did have to do a lot of educating around, we're not going to use real money to buy in-game tokens.
Yeah.
Until I did have one kid who reached a point in a particular game where in order to play with friends, you did need a subscription. And so we had talks about, you know, like, okay, is this what you want your allowance to go for? And I had to lay down rules for navigating that. And then it was an education for me too. Mom, my friend can't afford to buy this Steam game. Can I send a gift card for it? You know, things like that. Like it was a lot of, as we went learning, because there's so many opportunities for money to slip away from kids, especially if there's a credit card linked, you know, to the account, or it's on your iTunes or something.
Apparently, this is a growing concern for college kids. And I've read that in a few places now. Between gambling and gaming, kids are racking up fairly sizable debts as they are out from under the supervision of their parents. So this can really give your kids a leg up if they have some level of financial legibility in the digital space. And I really think that's what we're talking about here. And so it starts first by just really comprehending money. So making that physical, even setting up accounts within the family system where you have credits and debits and they start to get comfortable with what that feels like and what that means. Because until it's a tangible, it stays in this realm of the theoretical. And for kids, that's really hard for them to quantify and track. I mean, it's hard for a lot of adults. There are apps that exist to tell you all of the places you're subscribed. I discovered because of the Olympics, I actually subscribed twice to Peacock because I did it on 2 different email addresses.
Oh no.
Yeah, and I found it through going through one of those digital, like, pirate things that go, or whatever, surveyors that goes through and shows you, hey, you're paying for this twice. But it couldn't even be picked up by Peacock because I used 2 completely different email addresses. So that's the kind of lesson that's valuable for your kids and for us.
It feels like there's like a couple of types of knowledge in this area. One is just about how finances work, right? Like how interest is calculated. And that, I mean, we did business math with all our kids at a certain point.
Very good.
That's just been a chunk of high school math is let's look at business math. But then also there's the best practices around online purchases.
Yes. Yeah.
And so there are things that we can put in place for ourselves and our kids. Like you can get a gift card and put money on that. And that's what online game purchases are deducted from, if they want to buy something for the PlayStation. And instead of the credit card, so that it's got a limit, right? Like if it's got $50 on this card, it's not going to rack up $300 in fees over the years.
Oh, that's such a good tip. That's such a good tip.
And it can't renew. If there's only $5 left on it, your annual subscription or something isn't going to kick in and renew.
You can start some of these lessons at the grocery store. Give them an amount of cash to spend. Let them do some of that calculating math on your phone with the calculator so that they buy what they're planning to buy with that amount of money before they check out. Give them practice with the tangible, and then you can move it into this more credit and debit system.
Yeah.
But I love that.
My mom said if I would be in charge of cutting out coupons and like going to the store with her and saying, we have a coupon for this, I could keep the savings.
Oh, I love that.
So that was some great math skills I developed.
I mean, that's such a good way. I love that as an option. I remember being in junior high and I went around the neighborhood and offered my services as a little housekeeper and earned extra money that way and used it to save up for something that I wanted to spend it on. Anytime you can give your kids the opportunity to earn money, famously, my son Jacob earned money by selling cookies in our neighborhood. So that is also very important. And you can be the one to pay it if you want to, pay your kids to do your laundry in addition to their own. Those are ways to help kids start to get that tangible relationship between money and effort and being responsible.
There's also the experience of buying something in a store, having that interaction. Because of the ages my 2 youngest were at during the COVID lockdown year, they sort of missed this chunk of time. And when we, emerged into the world, they were both so shy and uncomfortable. So I gave them each $5 and we walked down to the little local store and I said, pick out whatever you want and take it up there and pay for it. And we had to practice that transaction.
Interestingly, this generation is quite shy about phone and in-person conversations. They are so used to texting and expressing themselves digitally through their fingers. So a life skill that every child needs is how to order at a restaurant, how to talk to customer service or management at a place of business, how to make a phone call to talk with like a medical professional or a person who's going to be helpful about your travel or whatever the category is.
Right.
I discovered between my oldest and my oldest kids were very comfortable. My last 2 were not. They found it challenging, like to go in and meet with a counselor at college and talk things through. And we had to kind of coach it to make it happen. So if you can help your child start to feel comfortable with those in-person and phone-related customer service kinds of engagements, that's a huge life advantage for them.
Right. You can do it as a game, role play it with yourselves, and then get a friend or a grandparent or somebody to play the customer service person and let them call. I just saw the cutest video of a dad who had arranged with the doctor's office, and he brought his young son in and had the son go to the desk to like make the follow-up appointment. And just
Fantastic.
to give him the practice of getting the appointment card.
And similarly, there are forms to fill out at the doctor's office when you play sports, when you're applying to, do some kind of job. Having your child learn how to fit their handwriting, if it's a handwritten form, or use the iPad that has you digitally fill it out. They can do that when you're going, even for you, to the dentist, to the doctor, to the library, wherever forms are. Give it to your child to do.
That one just came up for us a couple of months ago. I think that's why I put it on the list, because my oldest took my youngest to a dentist appointment, and he had to fill out the form, and he didn't. He was so anxious about fitting the things in the blanks, and they both came home and they were like, "Mom, you missed the form filling instructions." Because you teach something 5 times, and the kid number 6, you're like, whoops.
Yeah, no, of course. I mean, for me, one of my kids, it was through trying to fill out a form for one of the sports he was playing that made him aware that he needed help with his dysgraphia, because he could not get his letters small enough to fit in this form.
Right.
And in that sense, it was a valuable lesson. But that is exactly what we're trying to do, is help our kids feel that they have the right skills to feel comfortable in the world, not just at home.
That's right. And filling out the bubbles on
a Scantron.
Right. Because kids who take standardized tests learn how to do that. And then some kids get to college and they have situations where they need to do that. And, my homeschool kids were totally, totally stymied.
Yeah. Which goes to also things like letter writing, thank you notes, use of stamps, practice putting the address in the correct place. As a kid, I always thought the address started like over in the last third of the envelope. And it took me till adulthood to realize it starts in the middle and you need as much room as possible, especially if your handwriting is big or messy. These are skills that can be practiced. Something in the old days, we don't have this anymore, but people used to keep phone books of all their friends with their addresses and their phone numbers, like a address book. And my mom used to have me copy hers over into a new one when there were too many crossouts. And I look back and I think, what an amazing gift that was. First, that she didn't mind having my juvenile handwriting in her beautiful address book, but just that patience of copying. So if we can think of opportunities like that, if an envelope needs to be addressed, it's not even necessarily that they're mailing it for their own purpose, but let's say you have to mail a document somewhere. Let your child have the practice of being the one to fill out the envelope, right? Just so that they get in the mindset of, this is what it will look like when I'm required to do it. It may not be frequent, but it's nice not to have the first time be when you're 18.
Exactly. And learning how to write a check.
Yes.
You're not going to have to do it often, but we had to do it when we bought our house. It is going to come up.
Yes, it does. Which you brought up houses, and this made me think of what it is to host people and to be a guest at someone else's house. Melissa, what kinds of skills do you think hosting requires?
How to make your guests comfortable. So there's the getting the house ready for the guest, and then thinking about what will they need while they're here, offering a guest a drink when they come in, helping them know where to, put their coat when they come in, making sure the bathroom is presentable, and how to prepare snacks, right?
Yes.
What are good snacks to serve when a guest is over?
One of the things I've noticed with young children is sometimes when they have a friend over, the only thing they really know how to do is parallel play. They aren't good at engaging and drawing the other child in. So it's really important before the playmate comes over to really talk about with your child, if this person's coming, what do you think they imagine this afternoon is going to be like? What would they be looking forward to doing with you at this house? Can we prepare those activities now so that when they arrive, we're ready? A lot of times what happens is we kind of assume children are like puppies. They'll just sort of bump into each other and frolic around. But your child may be so well established with their games and their toys, they don't think of how to include the other person. They don't know the skills to do that. And the other person ends up bored or feeling put out. So you can really teach that as a skill. It's very important. And the more prep you do, the easier it is for all of them to get along.
That's right. That's right. Helping learn that you give your guest a chance to choose what the game is going to be, and that you give up, some of the control that you're used to with your own things in your own home.
You can even use timers. So you're going to play this game for 20 minutes. You're going to have a snack for 10. The snack is ready to go. Like actually planning it as an event, not just as, okay, a couple of kids are over and they're all going to play. Some kids are naturally good at this, but if you have a child with any kind of attention deficit disorder or any of these, or autism or any special needs, a lot of times they just don't know how to recognize those cues in the other child. And so that's a skill you're trying to teach them, is how to see the feelings and needs of the invited guest.
There's one that goes along with that my youngest had me put on the list, which is how to watch shows with people or play games with people without spoiling it or talking through it or kind of diminishing the fun for someone because of the reactions that you're giving in the moment.
Such a good one. I mean, I think there are adults who need that one, especially at sporting events. Spilling their beer on you. Can you just behave?
As we're talking about the guest thing, I'm remembering that a friend of mine, I was always so impressed that when we would go to her house, her kids, no matter what they were doing, maybe they were running through the room in the middle of a game of tag, would always stop and greet all the adults by name. Hello, Mrs. Bogart.
That's beautiful.
And it had never occurred to me to teach my kids to do that. My kids, however, were famous for when I said it was time to go, they would get up and we would go because we had practiced it so much at home.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah. Melissa, I remember you saying that you did a lot of rehearsing of the behavior out in the world that you wanted to see from your kids. And I had practices like that too. One of my key practices I will pass on, since that's where we are now in this talk. Whenever I took 5 children to the library, we literally had a laundry basket of books that we were checking out, sometimes as many as 40 or 50 books. So the checkout would take some time. And I had toddlers all the way up to junior high when we were doing this. So we had this rule that when we got in line to do the checkout, everybody had to sit with their backs on the floor against the checkout counter while one of us went through and did all the checking out. And that helped the toddlers stay put. But that's another thing that you're teaching. What is the need you have for order and peace? When we would go to a supermarket, the rule was that kids under a certain age rode inside the cart. That's just how it was until they hit a certain threshold. So yeah, I think it's really important to teach these, rehearse them, and then expect the behavior, not show up totally not knowing what you're doing. And then suddenly your kids are running all over the art museum, making noise and touching paintings, right?
Right.
Rehearse in advance, go through your room, look at paintings without touching them, then go to the museum.
Wherever possible, I wanted to practice in advance so that I didn't have to correct in the moment.
Yes, absolutely. Well, one of the last things I thought would be fun to talk about is just kind of these, experiences that every family deals with. Pet care, throwing a ball, making a picnic, assembling a tent, right? These are shuffling cards. There is probably a list you can make of things that you take for granted, that you do pretty easily, that these could be passed on to your child. I can remember when I was teaching my kids how to shuffle a bridge, right? I didn't know I was going to teach it to them, but we were playing cards and I automatically did the bridge. And the next thing you know, we were spending an hour. Everybody had their own deck. They were all learning. So if you run across something you take for granted that's kind of a cool skill, taking a dog for a walk, whatever, bathing the dog, these are really fun and your kids want to learn them and you're already an expert at it.
I was engaged and weeks away from getting married before anybody showed me how to bat a ball.
Wow.
Gym class was a nightmare for me, start to finish. And you were just expected to kind of develop skills by osmosis. But my future brothers-in-law were having a catch out in the street. They were playing wiffle ball, and somebody handed me the bat, and I was like, no, no, no. And my sweet father-in-law stepped up and he said, here, like this.
Oh.
And I hit it out of the park, man.
Wow. I mean, that's even more amazing. That's beautiful. Yes.
I mean, it was a wiffle ball, but
I mean, come on. It's still connecting, it's still eye-hand coordination. And those skills are things that help you feel comfortable when you're in group settings, right? You don't want your child to feel like they can't swim or they can't hit or catch a ball or that they don't know how to safely climb, right? Like these are important sort of life skills to help them feel like they belong in the human race. So I love that you brought that up. Throwing a frisbee, another one. Those are not easy to throw. So get a couple of frisbees. And yesterday we were at my grandson's first birthday and we were at this outside park and there was a frisbee golf course on this park. And our family used to do that. We went and played frisbee golf. We were terrible at it, but just having like this long walk over the course, throwing frisbees into these, chain containers and trying to do it. That's all I'm talking about here. You don't have to become proficient. Take your kids bowling, take them skating. They should experience as many of those as possible.
Yes. I wish I had had a play-based encounter with the different sports as I was growing up instead of the stress-based, judgment-laden version that happened at school.
Oh, that's such a great distinction. I grew up with both, but I liked sports and I played them. So I saw all of it as really fun. But, pressure in any field makes you feel incompetent. So we do want play and a lot of room for mistake making and practice, and homeschooling really allows that, which I really love. Anything else that we want to include here before we close up?
As my kids approached college age, I recognized that there were some things about our very relaxed way of learning that hadn't given them skills that they were about to need, like having a workload and figuring out how to manage their time. And when we were making this list with my family this morning, my night, she'll be 20 tomorrow.
Oh my goodness.
My daughter, who's in college right now, said, the help you gave me last year on how to break my assignments into manageable pieces, how to read a syllabus and figure out like what work I'm going to need to do at what pace to manage all of my classes. Those are things that were really helpful.
Gosh, I really love that. I mean, being able to use Google Documents or spreadsheets or calendar functions. I had to learn how to do that in the pre-internet age with physical paper. And there were so many systems that were being sold at the time. The Franklin Covey system is probably one of the more famous ones. And then along comes the digital era, where all of these apps with their bells and their whistles and their alarms. And I mean, it really rescued me. I wish I had had that level available to me when I was young, but teaching it and making sure that it's workable for the child. One of the things my son Noah told me that was really useful to him is he would create his own stack of note cards of information, skills, and appointments that he needed to not forget. And every morning he pulls out this stack. It's between 15 and 20 cards and reviews them and then retires the ones when he doesn't need them anymore. Helping your child develop a personal system of organization that suits the style of temperament they have is really challenging, but it's a worthy goal and worth your time to try and help your kids find it.
And that, I think, takes it to a point that you made at the beginning, that there's this meta skill involved in all of this. There's a lot of things that hasn't occurred to us to put on our list today. And there's things that I still don't know how to do myself, but I know what to do when I bump into the problem. I know how to find the answers. I know that I can find a YouTube video that will walk me through it, probably, or some sort of navigational tool exists. So teaching our kids to be oriented in that way. How do I find out what I need to know? I think like that's the underlying most important thing of all.
Millennials and Gen Z, I found out, have a habit with YouTube that is worth pointing out. they are ever in search of the best YouTube on the subject that they're curious about, which prevents action. My daughter was explaining to me, she works as a therapist, that she's actually had to counsel the teenagers she works with that a good enough YouTube is good enough. That there can be, because of this fire hose of information that's available to us today, especially with AI augmenting that even more, where we get a payoff just by reading about the activity, not actually doing the activity. So watching a YouTube or reading ChatGPT's output feels almost like we've done it. And part of the discipline that we can teach our families, our kids, and even ourselves is to not move forward till we've done the thing we learned about, right? To not
Right.
just become entertained by other people doing the thing, but to turn it off and do it. I had a mom reach out to me. This is a fun kind of way to end, actually, recently. And she said, I stopped following you on social media for a little while because you made the statement that once I heard what I was supposed to do, I should turn it off and go do it. And she says, and it's taken me a couple of years to do everything that I've learned from you before I felt I could come back and get more. And she said, and it was life-changing. I made that kind of a family rule. Like if we watched a YouTube video on how to bake bread, we were now going to go bake the bread, not just enjoy watching someone else do it. And she said it was literally transformative to their entire homeschool. And I found that so inspiring and encouraging. And I'm kind of in that journey right now with gardening. And I think it really is powerful to remind all of us that the real skill is in the doing of the things, not just the organizing, sorting, and planning of the things, right?
Right. Not just the ideating and preparing by watching.
Right. I was talking with my friend Dottie, who I've mentioned many times in my book and on this show. And she said she remembered that I made a statement about the class of Californians I hung out with as a kid. She said, I remember you said they liked being known for their good taste more than their ability to cook. And I was like, absolutely. They wanted to be known for who knows the best interior decorator, not who's good at making their house homey. They wanted to be known for the best caterer, not for the food they prepared. They wanted to be known for the best art that they found to hang on their walls, not art they themselves had made. And I think as a homeschooler, we're really trying to return to this feeling of being makers, not just consumers who have good taste.
Right. And it's exciting to me that we have the freedom and the ability to say, oh, okay, you want to learn how to bake bread? That's what we're doing right now.
I love that. And there's so many other academic lessons embedded in that. But we will save that for another show.
That's right.
Melissa, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much for helping prepare today's episode. And we look forward to hearing from all of you on our social media accounts about what you found valuable this week.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay, that's another Brave Writer episode in the books. Thanks for joining Melissa and me today. We love it when you leave us reviews, when you send us comments via text message. We read them all. We also couldn't do this show without our fabulous production team at Nova or Jeanette Hall, the Brave Writer team member who handles all those administrative details you know nothing about. In the meantime, we hope that you have a fantastic week. Keep going, think well. We're rooting for you.